What's going on, everybody? My name is Polo. Hope you guys are doing well. Today we have a hot button topic today. We got Dr. Phil, and I guess they're having a debate on reverse discrimination. Now, I never really watched the Dr. Phil show. I don't think I've ever seen a full episode, but I have seen some of the clips that have made like headlines because he has some pretty interesting topics on his show. And, I guess somebody sent this to me, so figured I'd make a reaction out of it. Let's get into it. Let's go.
Based on what I read, see in the media, talk to people about, this is a topic that almost everyone feels strongly about one way or the other. I want to hear what the audience has to say. Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, if you're white, someone can discriminate against you, but there's no systemic basis to it.
But if it's becoming part of the university admission process, if it's determining hiring practices, dismissal practices in industry, is that not systemic?
Okay. They have these conversations about that are things that are really complicated to talk about because it's more than just one thing. All right. There was a time where you did need these policies in place, but at some point it has to stop. It creates resentment toward other people who don't get those same advantages, especially if those advantages are not being taken seriously. So, as long as that keeps happening, when we have an issue where this group of people is being disenfranchised, and then they're being pushed ahead of the line, and then they don't even take advantage of that opportunity given to them, then it's going to create resentment, which creates more division, and more division is kind of why the United States is in the condition that it is now in terms of the morale.
You could nitpick and find little instances on both sides, but I think if you look at it as a whole, then you begin to understand where it's coming from.
Who else has a comment? Yes, sir, in the back.
My name is Dan, and I think it's great that you try to fix some of the inequities that have happened in the past, but I don't think it should jump to the front of the line when you're going to college or you're trying to get a job. I think it's important that we address it very early on, where a lot of the major issues are happening in the families of some of the ones that are maybe disadvantaged, or if they're having trouble in school, it started at the elementary school level.
Okay, so he is not going to say it, but I'm going to say it. He's talking about mainly the black community. And the black community, if you're not aware, is probably ran by 80% women, 80% single mothers. And I truly believe that you need the mother, the father, you need that perfect balance to give your kids the best chance. Okay, that's what I think. But, the single mothers have been running the household of the black community since, I don't know, the 70s, 80s. I don't know when it started, but I know it's been for quite some time now. So when you look at all the communities that are disenfranchised, or as they're saying, it starts there. Okay, I come from this, so I can speak on it. And, people are so afraid to say things now because you'll get called a certain word. Like, oh, you can't talk about this, and people are afraid to hold people accountable. But that's the case. There's no longer family. And then also, I do think that we're also getting away from just some genuine core values that this country was founded on. And I'm not talking about the negative part. I'm just talking about the positive. So let's keep it going.
Where once they get to the admissions process or get to a job interview, it's based on your merit.
Candace, are we compromising standards if we do that because we haven't fixed the problem down the line?
That's correct. It is the policies are harmful also to the people that they purport to help. And we have all of the evidence there to look at. When you artificially place a Black American into a school in which they do not belong based on their knowledge, doesn't mean that they go on to get A's. In fact, there was a Black adjunct professor, you guys have definitely heard of him, Dr. Thomas Sowell, who was teaching at Cornell University, and he found that the majority of the Black American students that were there were on academic probation. Now, these students were some of the smartest in the nation, but because they were artificially placed amongst their peers at Cornell University, they were failing on academic probation. These policies have never helped Black Americans. It's just basically policies that are put in place to make people feel good, right? I feel like I'm doing something when in fact I'm actually creating harm.
I can't argue with her there. Okay. when you continue to give people things, then anything that is not earned is not valued. Okay. So if you consistently give people, you are not bettering that group of people. You need to hold them accountable for their actions. So I agree with what she's saying here.
You either know the answers or you don't.
When you say, hey, we have black students at a particular school who aren't performing at that school as well, the immediate assumption that you're making is, well, maybe it's because they're not smart enough, they're not good enough, or they don't belong here. Whereas
she never said that.
About the experience that they're having at that institution. Professors who believe that they're not intelligent enough, that they don't have the capability to do the work, that they see them as criminals, deviants, dangerous, up to no good, or they talk about them with the they statements. They're lazy, they don't care, they don't really belong here. They're only here for the financial aid.
I'm giving you actual facts.
The problem is education is not valued. It wasn't valued when I was young. In Black culture, education and higher learning is not valued. In fact, as someone who grew up without a family, without parents, without a mother, I pretty much had to build myself and take what I can from people that I ran across to try to be a decent human being. So I've lived in a few different, I lived around in a lot of ghettos and a lot of hoods, so I've seen it firsthand. And I remember when I first came to the city I'm currently in, that I spoke more proper than the average Black person does. And I used to hate that I didn't fit in, because as soon as I started speaking, they say, where you from? You know what I mean? And I used to try to fit in and like try to dumb down the way I talk just so I wouldn't get teased. I'm saying that to say this is that it's not valued, nor is it respected in a large percentage of Black culture to speak a certain way, or to value learning, to value education. Being a nerd is one of the worst things you can be called, next to a snitch or a few other words I can think of. But it's a cultural problem, all right? And this starts at a very, very young age.
No, I'm giving you attitude they're having at that institution. Professors who believe that they're not intelligent enough, that they don't have the capability to do the work, that they see them as criminals, deviants, dangerous, up to no good, or they talk about them with the they statements. They're lazy, they don't care, they don't really belong here. They're only here for the financial aid.
I'm giving you actual facts.
No, I'm giving you actual facts based upon extensive
say, well, maybe
research
they just
that's
don't
been
feel
done.
good. But that's not the case. I mean, I went to university. I did not feel good, right? I didn't pull the best grades in high school, probably got into a better university than I should have gotten into based on my performance in high school. It wasn't because of my feelings. It's because I wasn't focused on it. And that, we're talking about a cultural problem, what's going on back at home, as was in my circumstance. And none of that is because of institutionalized policy. It almost seems like you guys refuse to accept that, Black students aren't performing well. You feel like you have to have this burden of responsibility, when in fact, if you actually wanted to help, you would look at the facts, re-examine the fact that it's not helping anybody, it's not helping Black Americans to artificially place them into universities, and you'd make effective change.
But
the sad part of what she just said is that she's using logic and he's using emotion, to prove his points. And it's backwards. That's the sad part, was that she has to check him about that and say, just look at the facts, okay? Not how it makes you feel.
Actually wanted to help, you would look at the facts, re-examine the fact that it's not helping anybody, it's not helping Black Americans to artificially place them into universities, and you'd make effective change.
But you're making the assumption that Black students are academically inferior, and they're not.
No,
Some of them are mostly brilliant.
That's a feeling. She never said that.
That's the basic. No. That you are making the assumption that they are inferior.
You just said that they don't belong there.
Policies. I'm talking about the students that are based on the policies that you are defending right now, saying that we should have these policies that let them into these universities, not based on their skill set, but based on the color of their skin. So you are assuming that they are inferior.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.
To discuss what they were trying to discuss, they would need like a 3 to 5 hour podcast to go over all the issues that would need to be solved to relieve this issue. This is just for views and clicks as far as that episode, because you can't cram everything that's wrong with this discrimination issue, reverse discrimination, because of what's going on in the Black household. And as someone who was Black, who has grew up in the system, I'm old enough to remember when food stamps were actually physical, okay, when you can peel it off and go to the store with it. And I used to be embarrassed to go buy something in it, because one of my friends might see me with food stamps and I would get teased, okay, even though most of the community was on food stamps. And as someone who has had a really, really crazy childhood growing up from different foster homes every few years. I've only known my mother for a few years. And I've grew up in different projects and different hoods. And I've lived in the projects, I've been homeless, and I've lived in really nice foster homes. So I've had a pretty balanced, I don't know if you want to call it a balanced childhood, but a pretty crazy childhood, you know, and I've seen a lot of different things, and I've seen how the middle class lives, and I've seen how the hood lives. And in the hood, it's ran by the women, 80% single mothers. Okay. And most of these mothers are producing young boys that are with no father, with no impression of a father. Like I didn't have a father. I had to pull from men I admired and build myself as a man. But not everyone has the ability to do that. Okay. So you get guys that grow up thinking like a girl. And how do women act? You know, I love women, don't get it twisted, but women are emotional. Okay. Men are supposed to be more logical. And you have these guys that'll get into arguments and start shooting each other. They're quick to fight. You even got videos where there's a lot of men fighting women on Instagram, and they, you know, there's nobody there to teach these young boys how to be a man. And a lot of these dudes have the mindset of a woman because their mother bought into feminism and bought into, the welfare system and all these different things that empowered her. And the welfare system, by the way, incentivized women to get the man out of the house. So if you weren't doing too good and you were a couple, and if you as a couple you weren't doing too good, and you know you're just barely making ends meet, but the government says, hey, I'll give you food stamps and I'll give you free housing and a bunch of other things, as long as he's not living with you. Well, the first time they get into a confrontation, that man is out of the house, okay, because she's ready to get. So in that case, that happened around the 70s, 80s or so, and that pushed a lot of men on the streets. That empowered the woman, and it made her do this boss babe thing, this feminist thing, and then the birth control, all these different things that continue to separate men further and further away from women. And if you don't believe that a father is important in a community or to young boys and young girls, then all you got to do is just look at America today. Look at the communities where, or anyone who grew up without both parents. And I'm talking about versus look at someone who grew up with both parents and the father was the lead. Because just because you have both parents don't mean you still had a great childhood, but you have to have a strong father to lead a full family. So, I mean, that's, like I said, it's a lot more complicated. And in the black community, there ain't that many fathers. That's why it's the most dangerous community in America. Okay. And we do this thing now where we keep rewarding women for having children. And it seems like the more children they have, the more benefits they get. A man is just an option. And when you play with human nature like that, where you incentivize the woman and the man has to go out there and get it how he lives, and he comes back to the woman has a mindset, hey, I don't need you, I just want you. Okay. You know, but after that, that's it. So that's why there's a gender war going on right now between black men and black women. And it's constantly getting more and more fuel every year with these movies and the music and the culture in general that continues to separate them. And now you just, every year it's something else that we separate each other with, you know, from the LGBTQ thing, Democrat, Republican, feminist, you name it, light skin, dark skin. We separate ourselves in so many different ways. I don't think that there'll ever be unity again, you know, because we just come every year it's something else. I don't know. Oh man, that was a tangent. Guys, if you like videos like this, let me know by liking the video. I appreciate the support. Hope you guys have a great day. Peace.